Previously on Crap. Lots of people had a fight on the planet Kofar, and unfortunately a couple of them survived. Evil, kind of, but maybe not quite Sith Smilo Ren was revealed to be Timu Ezra all along.
It was all a ruse, you pathetic little ant. For you see, I, the landlord, was the mastermind the entire time.
Making Jedi Master Squid Game and co. look very silly for letting him off with a caution for his part in the murder of Jedi Master Tommen Baratheon in Episode 2. Smilo brutally murdered Jedi Padawan Jecki Stardust by giving her no fewer than 3 bonus holes, then he snapped NordVPN's neck. Sad Wojak. But when Master Squid Game went to kill him, he was stopped by series protagonist Occupational Safety and Health Administration, who thought it would be much better and more humane if Smilo were murdered in a bout of mid-air buggery at the hands of some murder moths, rather than by the lightsaber of her former master. However competent the giant murder moths appeared to be, next to the many Jedi Knights Smilo had already killed in that episode, who were really about as effective as a dildo made of pastry, it should go without saying that death by buggery did not befall Smilo, and so I shall not say it. Unfortunately, before Master Squid Game could tell Occupational Safety and Health Administration about all the evil things he was responsible for off-screen in Episode 3, he was shot with a stun gun by evil twin Fanny Mae, who had abandoned her quest to kill 4 Jedi Masters in order to reunite with her sister, whom she had previously tried to kill. Then she knocked her sister out and stole her identity so she could get back to trying to murder the 4 Jedi Masters, even though she didn't bother murdering Squid Game while he was unconscious, because she is a joke character. Despite Fanny Mae having a very obvious silver lesbian tattoo on her forehead and hair recently singed by a lightsaber, Master Squid Game seemingly fell for Fanny's little switcheroo, and they both trudged back to their ship, leaving the corpse of Squid Game's own apprentice lying on the floor of a forest to be eaten by animals because nobody gives a shit. Even though Smilo's Cortosis helmet was also lying in that clearing, nobody thought to pick it up, because if Squid Game had taken it with him, then Smilo couldn't have it in the next episode, and we need him to have it, so fuck. Smilo, for his part, retrieved both his mask and an unconscious Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and the episode ended with him mouthing nonsensical lines while Kylo Ren's theme played in the background for reasons that will probably prove to be cringe. For a more extensive list of the many reasons Episode 5 was a no-good, very bad, comically inept cavalcade of baffling nonsense, go and watch my last video. For the purposes of this video, though, we're up to date. And that pretty much means I've run out of things to talk about, because nothing really happens in the episode we're covering today. Honestly, trying to turn this into a meaningful video is like alchemy, turning nothing into gold. Or hell, I guess I'll settle for a turd with a rusty bronze sheen to it. Let's begin.
As he begins to untie a belted knot from around his waist, she straightens up for a better look. He begins to undress, revealing a prominent scar on his well-toned back. Dropping his billowy-legged hakama pants, he steps forward with the sunlight accentuating his taut muscles.
Do not come.
Keeping her predatory gaze on him, she lies in wait behind some rocks closer to the water's edge. Her fingers gently wrap around the saber hilt. She picks it up in her hand, staring at it intently.
How does it feel?
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come to the overflow room!
I'm going to preface the following breakdown with a message I have placed increasing stress on across my last 2 videos. We're getting closer and closer to the end of this season, and we really haven't begun answering an increasing number of rather important questions. What really happened on Brendok? How is Smilo connected to Brendok? What did the Jedi do on Brendok? Who, if anyone, is responsible for Smilo? What's Smilo's relationship with the Jedi and the lesbian space witches? Why did Occupational Safety and Health Administration leave the Jedi Order? Why doesn't the Jedi Order know more about what happened on Brendok? Who has been deleting things from the Jedi archives? When will Amandla Stenberg pull her first facial expression? These were already pressing concerns as we hit the end of Episode 4, which was the midway point of the season. They became rather more pressing as we hit the end of Episode 5, which gave us little save a few obligatory not quite character deaths, some pointlessly flashy lightsaber moves that considered to be the best choreography of all time, and Fannie Mae pointlessly switching her motivations for the 13th or 14th time. And, well, it's not really a spoiler, is it? Because you can't spoil something that's already rotten to the core, but we're going to hit the end of this episode, leaving us with just 2, having done nothing, absolutely nothing, to advance any of these plot threads. And the slower this show gets, and the more time it wastes as it approaches its conclusion, the more it feels like The Acolyte has been written with the presumption of a second season in mind. In fact, we know from Leslie Headland herself that Smilo's reveal was not originally slated for Season 1, Episode 5. The presumption of a 2-season arc is not an excuse for the writers wasting as much time as they have. Headland has also said she considers The Acolyte the most important thing she has ever created, which if true is depressing given how very empty it is. But it might well be an explanation for it. Lazy, uninspired and otherwise talentless people who believe they have 16 episodes to play with rather than 8 will not feel obliged to ensure they get the maximum bang for their $180 million.
Money, a lot of money.
Will indeed allow themselves to bookend an objectively action-packed episode 5 with 2 episodes of 0-calorie filler content. That we'll find ourselves running into episode 7 still knowing nothing of substance about who the show's protagonist really is would be astonishing if this weren't Disney Star Wars in the year 2024. But it is, so I guess it's not. But we'll come to how empty Occupational Safety and Health Administration is presently. Actually, no, sod it, we'll come to that now. Occupational Safety and Health Administration wakes up with a start. For I think the 4th time? No, the 5th time. No, hang on, fuck it. The 6th time? Well, they say write what you know, and Leslie knows all about rendering girls unconscious to shove them into the arms of a villain. For a story about these 2 twins, Occupational Safety and Health Administration and Fannie Mae, The Acolyte has done an appalling job with its deuteragonists. In the last video, I went through the 14 different iterations of Fannie Mae, demonstrating that she isn't a character, but rather a set of half-baked ideas for several characters, any one of which could assert itself at any given moment. This makes her unpredictable in the way a random number generator is unpredictable. Just substitute the algorithm that really determines the random number generator for the writer's mental disability that determines which of the many Fannie Maes is on screen at any given moment. But at least Fannie has had a motive. The problem there is she's had too many motives, and most of them are mutually exclusive. But Occupational Safety and Health Administration is worse. Occupational Safety and Health Administration has made it to episode 6 without once being in control of her own journey, and she doesn't have a motive because the writers haven't even begun creating a character. The frequent recourse to unconsciousness is about as good a way of illustrating this point as the 14 iterations were with Fannie Mae, because they amount to the writers shoving Occupational Safety and Health Administration from place to place without having to come up with a reason for her to want to be anywhere or do anything. After all, if she had wants, she'd have values, and if she had values, she'd be something like a character, and characters are hard to write, so no. Let us recap. In episode 1, she wakes up with a start after we transition from Fannie murdering Trinity. This one is only really there because the show was attempting a misdirect, and it wanted us to wonder whether this was the same person waking up from a memory or from a bad dream. Occupational Safety and Health Administration is then falsely accused, wrongly arrested, and dumped on a prison ship when she really should have just been mind-read by the Jedi who arrested her to confirm her guilt or innocence, or at the very least escorted back to Coruscant personally by the Jedi who arrested her. Then her fellow criminals hack the ship, then she gets stuck on the ship, then the ship crashes, meaning her first interstellar journey was completely outside of her control. During this entire period, the only decision she makes is to take the mind control facehugger off a prisoner in the next cell, which is supposed to tell us that she is good people. It's a save the cat moment, but which really just reveals that she is an idiot, because she'd already been told that they only put facehuggers on violent criminals. Next, she wakes up with a start on a frozen world, but this is a false start because really she is just dreaming that her twin sister was telling her the plot of the show. Again, completely out with Occupational Safety and Health Administration's control or agency. This is just information being dumped on her, and so dumped on the audience, with about as much respect for our integrity as your average bukkake recipient on a cheap porn shoot. Then she wakes up with a start for real on the frozen world, but having previously said that she completely trusts the Jedi enough to hand herself over to them willingly, she runs away when she sees their ship approaching. She walks backward off a cliff because she really is the kind of person who would spell special with a capital 7, and she is rescued by Master Squid Game. Then she is taken to the Jedi ship, where Master Squid Game and Master Green Bean decide that she is innocent because another assassination attempt was made against Tommen Baratheon while she was in custody, so she cannot logically be the killer. Meaning that, as of the beginning of episode 2, Occupational Safety and Health Administration has gone from ship to planet and been exonerated of the crime for which she was accused while doing absolutely nothing. At no point in episode 2 does she make a single decision that impacts the plot. She is used as the mole wearing the wire, baiting Timu Ezra into dumping yet more information on her without any agency on her part, and her only consequential act is not hitting her sister with the stun gun, though she later explains this away as her hesitating. This means that the plot proceeds because she is too incompetent to do the one thing she was actually asked to do. Episode 3 is the flashback episode where once again everything proceeds without any real input on her part. She says she wants to join the Jedi, which is unmotivated, but the impact of that statement, the way it actually affects the rest of the plot, is actioned by everyone else around her, not by her. And she once again wakes up with a start, having been carried out of the burning vagina fortress by Squid Game. So, once again, events proceeded despite her. Then in episode 4, she is dragged on the mission to track down Fanny Mae, where she once again affirms that she is too incompetent to be of any use to anybody.
It comes to it, and she doesn't listen to me. You need to stop her. I won't be able to do it.
When Smilo arrives, she is knocked out again in lieu of taking any decisive action, meaning she wakes up with a start in episode 5 with the battle already commenced, in which she plays no role whatsoever. In fact, the script goes out of its way to remove her from consequential proceedings until it's time for Yord to die. She does make one truly, affirmative decision, which is to stop Squid Game from killing Smilo, leaving that job to the murder moths and their buggery, which in fact means that her decision stops a thing from happening. Then she gets knocked out again by her sister to wake up with a start here in episode 5. So, Occupational Safety and Health Administration has gone from one ship to a planet, to another ship, to another planet, then back to the ship, then to another planet, then to another ship, then to this planet, and at no point has she, the protagonist of the show, determined her own course through any of it. Now, you don't have to have an all-action, all-conquering, in-command protagonist running and gunning their way through your plot. Luke is led by events throughout much of A New Hope. I've written a book, it is long, of course, with a young, inexperienced protagonist who spends much of the story completely out of his depth, but you learn things about characters like this by watching how they react to events. They still make decisions. Sometimes those decisions don't alter events that immediately follow, and sometimes those decisions lead to bad outcomes that determine those subsequent events. But the protagonist is not blank. Their actions, their reactions, their reflections tell us who they are as individuals, as characters, and this can build to a climactic moment near the close where a pivotal decision is made by, and understood because of, those smaller preceding beats. The story forms the character who then ends up shaping the story. But that is not what we've got with Occupational Safety and Health Administration. With her, we have a character on the scene because the scene needs a protagonist to be there as the eyes of the audience, in order that we, the audience, sees what is happening. Those events leave little, if any, impression on Occupational Safety and Health Administration herself. There have been moments, as I've pointed out across all my earlier videos, where Occupational Safety and Health Administration should be reacting to these events, should be forming character, should be laying down those formative beats that will determine the story later, but next to none of those are present in the show. As a result, we have got two twins to whom the entire story is anchored. In the case of Fanny Mae, you can't really say that any one decision is out of character, because there are simply too many bits of character in play that just don't work together. But in the case of Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and this will be on full display throughout this episode, which is why I'm laying it all out here now, we can't really determine that anything she is about to say or do is out of character, because she doesn't have a character to be out of. Here then, in episode 6, she wakes up in a mysterious cave. We'll just park the fact that having taken a little tumble off quite a small ledge, she's apparently been unconscious for the 3-hour journey out of the forest on Kofar, and then the entire hyperspace journey from Kofar to unknown planet, and then during a swim from the island where Smilo inexplicably parks his ship into this cave. We're parking that that because it's obviously dumb and because the show is like the evil alt-universe twin of Stephen Hawking that has no understanding of time whatsoever. Now, if the last thing you remember is an evil smiley Sith murdering all of your friends and then being knocked out by your evil twin sister, and then you wake up on a mysterious planet with nobody else around, isn't it at least reasonable that you'd think you'd been kidnapped? Would you not be immediately distrustful of everything around you, or at the very least frightened and disoriented? If you'd woken up in these circumstances, would the first thing you do be to take a big old swig of unknown fluid from an unknown bottle next to some unknown stew? Wouldn't it maybe tell us more about your character if you'd been shown wanting to do that because you're very thirsty, but holding back because you're tense and scared and you've no idea where you are or who you're with? I think that'd be reasonable. I think that'd tell us something about your character and what you're thinking in this moment. But as we've just painstakingly established, Occupational Safety and Health Administration doesn't have a character, and she doesn't think. And I guess 6 episodes in is too late for the writers to bother coming up with one now. So no, up she gets, swigs she takes, and then, like she's in some video game where the player character wakes up with amnesia in a room that just happens to have all their basic inventory lying in the nearest closet, she finds a bundle of clothes and some of Fannie Mae's daggers and she puts them on. That dagger, by the way, which you'd think she'd keep handy given she has no idea where she is or who she's with, it's not really relevant again at all. Not in this episode anyway. She toddles out of the cave and onto the pretty island exterior of Unknown Planet. We'll find out shortly, by the way, that this is indeed Smilo Ren's unknown planet, and this is his little cave home, which makes some of the interior design choices interesting. He's installed railings, obviously, because he knows Occupational Safety and Health Administration is on the scene now, but all this gubbins inside? The portable stuff makes a lot of sense, but when, how, why, and to what ends would he have installed this massive great pipe thing in the wall? The island's quite clearly uninhabited, the pipe doesn't seem to lead anywhere, it's not connected to anything, there's no other infrastructure on the island, so what gives show? Why is there a big old pipe? Is it just there to make the scene look more interesting? I think that might be it. And if you're wondering whether me critiquing the interior decor of a cave house might be indicative of how little else there is to say about this episode, you'd be absolutely right. There's Smilo's ship just parked over there, cut off by the ocean. Smilo, why have you parked it there? What happens if the tide comes in? What happens if someone finds this planet and you have to escape in a rush? Do you have to swim? Or do you just think to yourself, oh, God fucking damn it, now I've got to hide for them for the next 6 hours until the tide fucks off. I've heard a few people speculate that this planet might be Ahch-To, the infamous island where Luke Skywalker infamously chucked his lightsaber away, used a giant pole made from all the trees that don't exist there to go fishing, and then milked an elephantine tit to drink its greeny blue goodness. I don't think this is that island. For one thing, there are no frog nuns living in their little stone huts. For another, though there are elephantine bird creatures, there are no big milkable aliens in sight. Unless these little critters mega-revolve into them, it's not impossible, I guess. There are also rumors that the island will end up being balsamic, I've got that in my cupboard, we'll run with that, which I gather features prominently in the Darth Plagueis novel, and which would then establish a clear origin point for cortosis, since balsamic had a lot of that. I think the Plagueis novel is still canon, so it's not impossible we'll have a Rings of Power moment where the title card switches midway through the episode, though in the case of Mordor the reaction was very much, well fucking duh, while in this case it's going to be, fucking what? I have been right in quite a few of my predictions for this show, but I have also been wrong on quite a few, because the predictor isn't really anything set up in the show or the wider Star Wars universe. It's not the basic rules of writing, or even such things as logical consistency, or character payoffs, or people who begin in point A going to point B because it's where they should be going. No, the predictor is in fact, what is the worst decision the show could take from this point? Involving Plagueis might be the worst decision the show could take, but I think the island just being a random, island with no broader significance, I think that would be by far the most dramatically inert and useless option available to the writers. So I'm going to err on the side of insignificance. Occupational Safety and Health Administration goes for a little wander down the stony beach, and note who isn't behind her in this shot. Look how lovely and empty it is. Kind of place you'd go if you want to be alone, which is what she is at this moment. We get a quick look at those creatures again. I think they drafted in South Park's very own Dr. Mephisto for this episode. You can't see it in this shot, but each of these elephant puffin hybrids has at least 8 butts on its stomach. Then the camera pans around and oh look! Look who's just teleported into the scene! It's Smilo! For fuck's sake, he didn't even come from behind her or around a corner or from behind an outcrop. He actually walks in from in front of her. So yeah, the only way she hasn't already spotted him is that he has just popped into existence. Once again, a motivation issue presents itself. Even if Occupational Safety and Health Administration hadn't already assumed she'd been kidnapped, she now knows that she has. And moreover, by the guy who killed all of her friends. For all she knows, and she certainly acts as if she believes this to be the case, he doesn't know she's awake yet. Moreover, she can see the ship. It's a very, very short swim just over there. Fuck, you might even be able to wade that distance. She really has no business following Smilo, being interested in Smilo, being anything other than fearful of Smilo and desperate to get away from him. But alas, as we have already established, Occupational Safety and Health Administration doesn't have an interest in anything at all because she's not a character. So though I might be trying to get away from here as fast as possible, and you might be trying to get away from here as fast as possible, she can literally do whatever the fuck the script wants it to do because she has no motives. Anyway, we hop away at this moment to deal yet more damage to the concept of time. Remember how, in the last episode, Squid Game and disguised Fanny got back to their ship before Smilo finished off the murder moths and found Occupational Safety and Health Administration? Remember how we were explicitly told in episode 4 that it was a 3-hour trek from Smilo's ship to Kilnacker's shack? Or thereabouts. Anyway, we were told they had 3 hours of sunlight left upon leaving their ship, and the sun duly went down a couple of minutes after Fanny entered the shack. So I'm saying 3 hours. And that was 2 unencumbered people walking. Smilo's had to carry an unconscious Occupational Safety and Health Administration all the way back to his ship, which you'd think would slow him down on account of how massive her boobs are. Well, despite Squid Game and Fanny returning to their ship before Smilo had even set off for his, and despite Smilo having a 3-hour trek out of the forest to complete, and despite the fact he's had to hyperspace all the way from Kofar to Unknown Planet, and despite the implied additional time that's passed during which he's cooked Occupational Safety and Health Administration a stew and got himself ready for a bath, despite all these things having happened, we rejoin Squid Game and disguised Fanny, and they still haven't fucking taken off. I mean, for fuck's sake, show. Look, I don't care if a new set of writers has jumped on for this episode. You don't just get to ditch the previous episode's basic setup because it's inconvenient to you. For one thing, it's lazy as hell and comically inept. It's the kind of basic error your average D&D dungeon master would get called out for before getting salty and prissy and taking his dice home. For another thing, it is impossible to rely on any sort of ticking clock tension when your idea of time runs on special relativity, with the word special being synonymous with retard. As I recall, something very similar happened in episode 2, where Fanny Mae had got from killing Trinity to Unknown Planet, then to Olega, then pissed about for some time trying to punch Tommen through his force field, all in the time it took Squid Game and Co. to complete a 5-minute walk back to their ship on the ice planet. There is a forgivable amount of fudge you can deploy to explain away variable travel times in Star Wars, but this is just too much fudge. It is an impossible amount of fudge. The problem is, it's the required amount of fudge. Because even this show realizes that last episode's events were so important that Squid Game had to try and notify Coruscant the moment he got back to his ship, which we now see him doing. But that means the show completely fucked up by having Squid Game get back to his ship first. Because if he gets back to his ship first and he contacts the Jedi, and we've already established that you can hyperspace from Coruscant to Kofar in under 5 seconds, then a bunch more Jedi would have arrived before Smilo had left the planet, so he would have been discovered and stopped by now. You needed to have found some way to delay his return until after Smilo had left the planet. Maybe it took them longer to get out of the forest now they'd lost their tracker, but even that wouldn't work because their tracker hadn't lost them. Basil the Convenience Beaver followed them all the way back to the ship. He was just hiding, which in turn causes a massive fuck up because Basil can't actually engage with Squid Game or Fanny Mae during their walk back to the ship, because if he did that, he'd probably give the game away and sniff Fanny out before we're ready for that to happen, even though it should have happened anyway because because she's got a massive lesbo tattoo and fucking burned noodles on her head. So yeah, pretty much everything here is completely broken. Speaking of things being completely broken, the ship is completely broken.
Clearance for transmission.
Emergency code 0.
Please. GXA. Repeat.
For no fucking reason. The comms keep cutting out and later the power will die completely because it's what the script demands. My notes from my first watch of this episode read, I'm guessing Fanny broke the comms, otherwise this is very convenient. And to nobody's surprise at all, Fanny didn't break the comms, this is just very convenient. No, by the way, the fact the ship was shown having power trouble back in episode 2 does not set up this problem, because this ship has since been back to Coruscant, where you'd think someone at the Jedi Temple would be employed to make sure it's repaired. They must run some checks on their ship in dock. They can't just send them off again if they might explode at any given moment. That's an Occupational Safety and Health Administration violation. And hell, why not have it that Fanny has done something to the comms? It'd be tricky because you'd think Squid Game would have walked straight there the moment he got back, but she'd have at least a motive to do that sort of thing. Kind of, maybe? She'd be buying time to finish her job and then escape undetected. Though I can't help but point out that if she really were out to kill Squid Game again, despite abandoning that mission in episode 4, then he should already be dead, shouldn't he? So I guess it can't be that.
Larger threat than we anticipated.
Oh, never mind, it's definitely that. Fanny! 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 You'd fucking stunned him! You came up on him while he was sleeping! You spent hours following him out of a forest! You've been on this ship together fuck knows how long! Why isn't he dead yet, Fanny? Why the fuck isn't he dead yet, Fanny?
I'm going to reset the transceiver. Take the wheel.
Now see, we know that at some point Squid Game has to learn that what he thinks is Occupational Safety and Health Administration is really Fanny Mae. And yes, that does require that we ignore the massive tattoo on her forehead and her obviously singed hair, because if he'd noticed these things then the ruse would already be up. In the last video, I laid out a few ways this beat could play out, based on things the show has already established. I suggested, for example, that Basil the Convenience Beaver would be involved, making noises at Squid Game that Squid Game couldn't understand, because we established in episode 4 that Yord was the only one of the team who speaks Beaver. I suggested that Squid Game might get suspicious if he asks Fanny Mae to help fix the ship, believing her to be Occupational Safety and Health Administration, who is a mechanic, which skill set Fanny doesn't have. I suggested that perhaps there might be a moment where he caught a glimpse of Fanny's upper right arm and noticed the lack of the tattoo that Occupational Safety and Health Administration got while she was out on a booze cruise. Remember how he noticed that and called it out in episode 2? So there's loads of ways this could play out. A whole bunch of payoffs to various things the show has set up that could allow Squid Game to prolong the case of mistaken identity as long as we need, while giving him a chance to rumble Fanny himself later. Suffice it to say, we are not going to use any of these things. We're just going to piss about until the script decides it's bored. So here, rather than asking Fanny to check the transmissions, which you'd think he'd do given he thinks she is Occupational Safety and Health Administration and so a mechanic, he goes to try and fix it himself. He has to squeeze past Fanny to get out of the cockpit, and despite wanting to kill him, she doesn't take this opportunity to kill him, because shut up. Squid Game does continue to act his saggy balls off to give him his dues. He resets the transmitter, and as he walks off, Basil pokes his head around a corner. Basil really is a convenience beaver, because his actions are only decipherable by reference to the meta. He spent the last episode sneaking about the forest for no reason, popping up in odd places, eventually apparating onto the scene to pick up Pip's head after Smilo finally got it off his back. He spent all his time since sneaking around, following Squid Game and Fanny Mae back to the ship, not wanting to be found, because if he did want to be found, then Squid Game would likely already know that Occupational Safety and Health Administration is really Fanny Mae, and it's not time for that beat yet. Now Basil the Convenience Beaver is sneaking around the ship, still not wanting to be found, for pretty much the same exclusively meta reason, and doing his own thing. He's decided for the moment that he wants to fix Pip. The only previous interaction saw Pip piss on Basil's face. I guess he's a fan of water sports. He is a beaver after all. Oh hey, good job someone signposted where Pip's USB power bank is, otherwise the beaver would never have got anywhere. I wonder what nothingness this little subplot will lead to. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Occupational Safety and Health Administration is inexplicably following Smilo as he goes for a bath, which is our excuse for porn.
Oh, you touch my tra-la-la. My ding-ding-dong.
While While Smilo goes for a quick skinny dip, Occupational Safety and Health Administration decides to go rummaging through the clothes he very neatly and tidily folded off screen. She continues to not have a reason to do any of this, it is just what the script wants to happen. She grabs Smilo's girthy rod, I mean his mighty shaft, I mean his thick pole, I mean his mighty stick, I mean his hard member, I mean his lightsaber.
How does it feel?
It feels good, Smilo. It feels powerful. It feels right. Occupational Safety and Health Administration jumps up in alarm but pretends she doesn't know where the on button is.
Don't move.
Feels good, doesn't it? To hold one in your hand again.
Oh, Smilo. It really does. Excuse me while I fan myself.
Your stance is good. You should keep your other elbow up higher.
I'm sorry, Smilo. I'm out of practice. It's been a while since I held such a weighty implement as yours, Smilo. It's a two-hand job, Smilo. Not everyone is as well equipped as you are, Smilo. It is quite an experience.
If you're not gonna join me, I'd like to put my clothes back on.
I'm sorry, Smilo. We've only just met, and I'm already holding your elegant weapon from a more civilized age. You haven't even bought me a drink yet, Smilo. All I'm saying is, I'm not that sort of cartoon, Smilo. Yeah, it really does. It feels so fucking right. But we're going so fast. You whisked me away. You cooked me a meal. Here I am holding your hot laser sword. I just think we need to slow it down a little bit. Get more in the mood. Sunset. Candles, maybe some Lionel Richie on the radio. You've got to ease me into it, Smilo. I'm not like Jackie. I'm not just going to let you poke holes in me. You're going to have to earn it.
My goodness, you've grown.
I'm wondering if it's honorable to kill me like this.
No, I'm wondering if my mouth will fit. Yes, yes, totally. I am definitely wondering whether it is honorable to kill you like this. That is definitely what I am wondering, Smilo. Well done.
Now you're wondering how I can read your mind. I can't. Not exactly. Your anger betrays your thoughts.
Oh, believe me, Smilo, if you could read my mind. Anyway, no, Occupational Safety and Health Administration shouldn't be wondering how you can read her mind, because we already know Jedi can read minds, because we've seen them doing it several times throughout this show. Yes, it might once have been the case that the Jedi could read emotions, but that shouldn't help you in this case because Occupational Safety and Health Administration doesn't have those. But this show has already done away with that limitation by showing them literally reading people's fucking minds. So I don't know why it's trying to be coy about it now.
Did you kill Saul?
No.
Did you kill May?
No. Interesting you ask about him first, though.
That is not especially interesting, no. What is interesting is why you didn't kill Squid Game or May. You know, given that that is what you were definitely going to do until you decided to take May hostage in order to tell Squid Game that that is definitely what you were going to do. This episode is empty enough that we might as well just relitigate the points because really, we're almost halfway through now and fuck all has happened. Hey, Smilo! Why didn't you kill them? Why did you stop to tell them you were going to kill them rather than, I don't know, killing them? Could it possibly be that you only did that because Episode 5's writers wanted to force in some exposition in a way that would allow your plans to go slightly awry, and they couldn't think of a better way to do it? Yeah, that sounds about right.
Special relationship, isn't it? Master and pupil?
Yeah, that's more like it, Smilo. Be my master. Make me your pupil. Hey, Smilo. Know how you just climbed out of the water, Smilo? Why am I wetter than you are, Smilo? Being professional for a moment, I will note the slight juxtaposition in people's attitude to nudity in Star Wars shows. I vaguely remember when people said it was bad and sexist to have Princess Leia in a bikini because it attracted the wrong kind of fan. It was fodder for teenage boys' lurid imaginations. So Leslie, what do you call this? I'm fine with both, by the way. And that sentence works in multiple definitions. But it is funny to find all the new fans who are exactly the sort of people to complain about lurid bikini shots in Return of the Jedi being absolutely fine with lurid nudity shots in The Acolyte. I just think everyone should be naked. There's fuck all else going on in the show, at least it'd be interesting. I will also note that we've now got a couple of pieces of evidence suggesting that there might be a mole in the Jedi Order. First, we had Squid Game suggesting they had been ambushed because somebody knew they were coming, and now we've had Smilo telling Occupational Safety and Health Administration her own backstory information that he probably can't have got just by reading her emotions. We'll get more of this a bit later too. Smilo seems to have quite a detailed knowledge about Occupational Safety and Health Administration's time at the Jedi Temple. Taken together, this might suggest that a Jedi is secretly orchestrating things behind the scenes, but as ever with this show, it is impossible to tell what's supposed to count as evidence and what is simply bad and convenient writing. After all, we've already gone over several things that should have been evidence for Fannie May's true identity: Basil, the tattoo on the arm and such, that the show did not consider to be evidence after all. It set them up and then did not utilize them as payoffs. My money would still be on one of the mothers from Frienddog orchestrating things behind the scenes, probably horny lesbian, but then again, the other rule of the show is that all reveals must be dramatically inert, so I find myself moving away from that theory for much the same reason I moved away from the idea that one of the mothers was Smilo to begin with. Oh hum. Anyway, that scene's just kind of done now, so they both walk off like there is absolutely no tension or distrust or indeed anything between them at all. It really does play as if the actors reached the end of their lines and the director said cut, but the camera kept rolling and they just went off for their lunch. It's a funny way of turning someone to the dark side, isn't it? Once upon a time, we had appeals to emotion, appeals to ideals, appeals to familial loyalty, appeals to ideology. None of these have worked, I guess, so sure, why not try and lure Occupational Safety and Health Administration over with a nice big shot of your Smilo Ren? Maybe Dooku should have tried that with Obi-Wan. Maybe Sheev should have tried that approach with Anakin. Maybe he did.
Hey, hey, what I'm saying is do it to me one more time.
Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Squid Game's ship finally makes it up to its hyperspace rectangle. I encourage you to take note that these ships, like the ones in the prequels, detach from their hyperspace add-ons before descending through planetary atmospheres. And I encourage you to note this because the animators will forget that this is what they do in a couple of scenes' time. Master Squid Game climbs back to the cockpit and gives disguised Fanny a hug. This, obviously, is where he dies, because she can just slip that knife under his ribcage or jab it into his spine. She could literally not wish for a more advantageous position to be in, but she doesn't. She doesn't kill him because this is one of the 14 other Fanny Mays, not the one we saw in the previous scene. No, that one wanted to kill Squid Game. This one's perfectly fine for a hug.
You saved us, Osha. You saved me. That man, he corrupted your sister. He pushed me to a place I'm sorry.
No, Squid Game. Occupational Safety and Health Administration did not save you. In fact, if you wind up getting killed by Smilo in one of the last 2 episodes of the show, then technically she condemned you because she stopped you from killing a guy who had just murdered almost a dozen Jedi, including your Padawan, who had just snapped Yord's neck with his bare hands, who had just told you he was going to kill everyone who had seen his face, who had told you, moreover, that he is what you would call a Sith, being the ancient enemy of the Jedi. You are allowed to kill Sith, you twat. And no, she didn't save you from yourself by stopping you killing him in anger. Obi-Wan didn't lose himself when he killed Maul in The Phantom Menace. He was quite angry at the time. Look, here's him shouting angrily. Anakin did lose himself a bit when he beheaded Dooku, but Dooku was quite literally disarmed in the sense that Anakin had already cut his fucking arms off. That is not a comparable situation. And as I keep having to point out, stopping Squid Game from killing Smilo but then trying to get Smilo buggered to death by giant moths is still trying to kill him. If anything, it's trying to kill him in a far less humane way. So no, actually, the only person Occupational Safety and Health Administration saved was the actual mass-murdering psycho villain. Good job.
It's time to make things right. It's time for me to face the High Council.
No, Squid Game. We know how this works. Every time you say, "It is time for me to go and do a thing," something pops up and interrupts you. You have promised twice to tell Occupational Safety and Health Administration the truth. You told her you would tell her the truth once you got back to the ship in episode 4, then suddenly Smilo stopped you. You promised her you'd tell her the truth in episode 5, then suddenly Fanny interrupted you. Stop kicking the fucking can, Squid Game. Fess up already. Oh, look what happened. Something got in the way again. Suddenly power cut. What a surprise. Honestly, the length this show will go to drag out its runtime and keep its pathetic mysteries alive. Anyway, Squid Game asks disguised Fanny to go and take a look. But lest you think we'll get to that idea I floated earlier, Squid Game realizing she's not who she says she is by observing her failing as a mechanic, no, make like Luke Skywalker and just lob that idea into the fucking sea because it makes too much sense. Meanwhile, over on Coruscant, nothing much is happening, so I'm going to complain about the lack of traffic. Remember Coruscant from the prequels? Crisscrossed by skylanes, immense amounts of traffic. Look at all these people living in an affluent city planet, the pinnacle of galactic achievement, all rich enough to own their own flying cars. And the sea levels didn't rise because the people of Coruscant wisely got rid of all their seas. We've now seen Coruscant several times over the course of 6 Acolyte episodes. And for those hard of thinking, the show usually reminds us where we are with the help of handy little title cards. But where's all the traffic? Where are the sky cars? Did the people of Coruscant only think to invent them in the 75 years between now and the prequels? Why? Flying cars come way earlier than hyperspace travel in the tech tree, unless you've got the shuffle button ticked. Was this another of those rather basic things that the $180 million budget didn't quite stretch to, or did they just forget? Anyway, we join Master Greenbean in conversation with some fucking wanker, some fucking politician.
My colleagues in the expansion region will vote in favor of an external review of the Order.
Rancor has never been a friend of the Jedi, but I worry his fears convince so many.
A review should not be cause for alarm. The Jedi are always transparent with the Senate. This is a case of an ambitious senator grasping for power.
Apologies, Senator. I must go. But thank you for your update.
There is a superficial amount of world building being done here, which we really oughtn't to take too seriously, both because it probably won't come up again, and because if it does come up again, it'll do damage to the established world building of the prequels. Politics is fun, says nobody ever, so let's talk politics. Some fucking wanker mentions an expansion faction in the Senate, a senator called Ravencourt or something close enough that it doesn't matter, who has persuaded his faction of the Senate to vote for an external audit of the Jedi Order. Some fucking wanker thinks this won't be a problem though, because the Jedi are always honest and open with the Senate. We know that this is not true, and Greenbean knows that this is not true. Greenbean isn't even honest and open with the High Council because she doesn't want the High Council to be honest and open with the Senate, a state of affairs that really strains credulity, given how many Jedi, including no fewer than 3 Masters, have been killed in the past few days. You'd think that's the sort of thing the High Council might notice, especially when, in this episode, Greenbean basically gives up keeping all of this business a secret to begin with. In fact, you'd think news of it would have reached the High Council anyway, given the number of Jedi she's discussed it with in Episode 4 who weren't signed up to her secrecy pledge. You don't think Ki-Adi-Mundi would have at least mentioned something about it to his pals higher up in the Order? How did he get on the Order himself if not for climbing the greasy pole? The broader world-building problem is related to one I've raised in previous videos. By the time of the prequels, the Jedi Order does not believe itself to be threatened by any outside force until it is far too late for them to act. They occupy a position of lofty indifference, even assumed supremacy over the Senate, which is why, when they talk about forcing Creamy Sheev to step down, taking control of the Senate to ensure he doesn't try on January 6th the whole thing, was presented as a logical and feasible, if risky, step. This show has to end up with the Jedi in the position of assumed supremacy they occupy in The Phantom Menace. It cannot leave off with the Senate capable of, and perhaps even willing to, conduct an external audit of the Order, because this would completely alter the power dynamics in the prequels. After all, if the Senate has power over the Jedi Order, and the ability to audit, investigate, and presumably therefore constrain the Jedi Order, then it's doubtful whether old Creamy would have needed to concoct his harebrained "let's murder all the younglings" scheme to begin with. He gains functional control over the Senate long before he executes Order 66, and the Acolyte is now implying that he could have used that control to completely defang, disempower, and maybe even remove the Jedi solely by an act of politics. Lucas's conception of galactic politics in the prequel era mirrors, consciously or not, the transition of the Roman Republic to the Roman Empire, and the evolution and eventual dissolution of the Praetorian Guard under the rule of Emperor Constantine the Great, with the Jedi in the position of the Guard. The Praetorian Guard were most famously the bodyguards of emperors, and might have styled themselves the protectors of law and justice under the Roman Republic, but they evolved into an important extra-political faction able to dramatically alter the state of politics in the Empire by court intrigue, assassination, and the ability to proclaim the Emperor's successor. One of the features of Rome's transition from Republic to Empire was a change in the function of the Guards from a faction within politics to a faction above politics, earning the ire of the Roman Senate by their removal from civic oversight, essentially paralleling the position of the Jedi in the Republic, with the principal difference being that the Jedi were not, in fact, evil. Emperor Constantine, in possession of his own army, read the clones, as well as greater public support, read the Galactic Senate, ultimately put down the rebelling Praetorians, read the Jedi, defeated their anointed Emperor Maxentius, loosely read Yoda and or Windu, and symbolically destroyed their seats of power, the Castra Praetoria, read the Jedi Temple. None of this would have been necessary in Rome, just as none of it would have been necessary in the prequels had the Praetorians / the Jedi been meaningfully constrained by civic political institutions and ultimately answerable to the Senate. The Jedi always conceived of themselves as guardians of peace and justice in the Republic, and would aid the Senate and the Supreme Chancellor, but their independent, extra-political, and extra-judicial role is evidenced by, for example, their refusal to take part in the Mandalorian Wars at the time of the Old Republic, their assumption of military command during the Clone Wars, the requirement that Ahsoka Tano be exiled from the Order in order that she be tried under a Republic military tribunal in the Clone Wars animated show, and ultimately, the Jedi's reluctant willingness to take control of the Senate in order to remove Creamy and install a new Chancellor in Revenge of the Sith. So if the Acolyte does mean to flesh out this aspect of Star Wars world-building, and if it's chosen to begin with the Jedi under threat of audit and investigation by the Senate, then it is going to have to leave off with the Jedi not only surviving these audits and investigations, but becoming functionally immune to them in the future. Otherwise, Creamy could have just dissolved the Order, disarmed the Order, even arrested all of its members, with nothing but a vote in the Senate and the courts that he all but completely controlled by the time of Revenge of the Sith. Now, as I'm going through all of this, the problem should be immediately apparent to you, but I'll phrase it in the form of a question. Do you think anyone currently in Star Wars is aware of any of this? Do you think they care? Do you think it's really entered their minds at all? Or do you think they're just introducing things like Senate investigations and political enemies in order to mimic the vibes of the prequel films without really understanding what makes those work? This is Leslie Headland we're talking about. Look at Leslie. You can't tell me this woman doesn't use vibes. Green Bean hangs up on some random wanker, and then we're introduced to this guy.
What is it, Mark? We received a distress call from Master Soul. Apparently he's on a mission in the Outer Rim.
What did he say?
There were casualties.
Who?
The connection was faulty, but it sounded like the entire team.
Honestly, I'm genuinely overloaded here. How? Who? Names? Too many names. His actual name is Mark, for fuck's sake. Jacob Rees-Mogg. No, that's too parochial and he's not an MP anymore. It's fucking impossible. Which angle are we meant to take? Gay? British? Soy? Vegan? Iron deficiency. Why does he have bigger teeth than the beaver? Why is his hair a fucking tribble? Sod it. Off script. We're just going to go with whatever comes out of my mouth hole. Jedi Knight Soybean 1 Quinoa reports that yes, it does indeed appear that the emergency message Squid Game carelessly shot all over the radio confirms that a whole bunch of Jedi are dead. But wait, if Corn Mog Latte is just some random Jedi Knight and not part of Green Bean's super secret cabal, doesn't that mean that news a whole bunch of Jedi have been killed is now general knowledge? Isn't this the sort of thing likely to make its way to the High Council and therefore the Senate?
Prepare a rescue team to depart for the planet Kofar immediately.
How do you know where he is?
I sent him there.
So we are ditching the whole secrecy thing now? Question mark? Oh, it's so hard to know what character motives are when the show is this incompetently written. Some people are even supposing, based on the big scar on Smilo's back and his later suggestion that he was once a Jedi, that he might have been Green Bean's old apprentice. Or even that she is in some way involved with the evilman of the show. And that's as likely a theory as pretty much any other theory because we're really just making this shit up as we go along. I could say, for example, that the fact she's been so secretive about all of this, combined with the light whip, oh fuck yeah, we're getting to that, don't worry, combined with Smilo's scar and his Jedi knowledge, all adds up to support that theory. I could just as easily say that the fact she's abandoned that secrecy here, combined with everything she doesn't know about the events on Brendok, combined with Squid Game's later shady behavior, combined with what little I know of her backstory in the comics, is evidence against that theory. And I'm siding with the latter interpretation, but really you might as well just flip a coin. I'm pretty sure that's what the writers are doing at this point. You might be thinking that we'll get answers to all of this very soon, because we already know that you can insta-hop from Coruscant to Kofar, and Squid Game is still in orbit around Kofar, so they'll definitely arrive in the next scene and have a chat. But no, fuck that entirely. We're back off to Unknown Planet, where Occupational Safety and Health Administration dispassionately prompts the guy who's just murdered all of her friends to deliver some vague and tedious partial exposition for us. Partial because this episode is 100% committed to resolving absolutely nothing, so of course it has all its characters speak cryptically for no fucking reason.
You speak as if you were a Jedi.
I was, a long time ago.
I've never heard of you.
It was a really long time ago.
Hey, Occupational Safety and Health Administration? Who's this? Who's this? Who's this, Occupational Safety and Health Administration? Who's this, Occupational Safety and Health Administration? Who are any of these fuckers, Occupational Safety and Health Administration? I'm pretty sure you haven't heard of all the Jedi in existence, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. I'm pretty sure you haven't even heard of most of them. I'm pretty sure you couldn't name even a quarter of the boring non-entities you were in Jedi school with even. Do you even know Smilo's real name at this point? I don't remember him telling you. No, you haven't heard of him, you daft bint. And wait, Aren't these two roughly the same age? I mean, there might be a few years between them, but a really long time ago is kind of age dependent, isn't it? Mind you, given the Acolyte balks everything to do with time, maybe somehow Smilo is really several millennia old and he was trained by Moses.
Why'd you bring me here?
Why do you think?
Leverage?
Everyone does seem to want you.
Hey, here's an idea. How about you stop dicking about and just answer a straight question, Smilo? This isn't intriguing, it's annoying. We're really running low on time here. She's already seen your dick. Stop playing hard to get. Answer the fucking question.
If you keep me here, Soul comes to you. He's found me before. His strength in the Force is very powerful.
His strength in the Force is very powerful. His strength in the Force is very powerful. This is an actual line written by an actual adult. I know Star Wars has never been famous for its sparkling dialogue, but even Lucas at his worst respects basic rules of grammar and syntax. What happened to the Force is strong with him, or he's strong in the Force? Did nobody proofread the script, or is the proofreader just as as the writer? Tip for whoever is hiring these days at Disney Lucasfilm: illiterates should not be auditing the work of illiterates. Fuck me, if the ability to speak does not make you intelligent, the inability to speak certainly doesn't. Stop hiring Gungans.
You think that his strength, that's your strength in the Force, Osha. Someone ought to teach you that.
Oh god, this sounds like more vague nothingness, and it probably is vague nothingness. One Jedi's strength in the Force is not another Jedi's strength in the Force. Squid Game did most of the finding in episode 1 through mind-raping a prisoner and then some good old-fashioned detective work. The only way this isn't meaningless nonsense is if Smilo is referring to some unique Force signature in Occupational Safety and Health Administration that Squid Game noticed. And to be as fair as possible to the show, this wouldn't be entirely unsupported. You've got the indirect evidence. The Jedi knew to go to Brendok, they knew where on Brendok to look, and they knew who they were looking for. And you've got the direct evidence, such as Squid Game sensing Occupational Safety and Health Administration's presence when searching the crashed ship on the ice planet in episode 1. The problem is that, as is by now well established, this show views evidence as its enemy, and Smilo is speaking with such vagueness that he could be referring to something else entirely. I get that the show wants this all to be very intriguing, but you can be intriguing without lapsing into obscurantism and pointless guff. Strong in the Force? I'm sure he is, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, but tell me, what did he sense? What about you caught his attention? Of all the people in the galaxy, the Force called out to you. Why do you think that is? That's still indirect, it still strikes for intrigue, it's still designed to be mysteriously leading, but it doesn't abuse the plain meaning of words and leave the audience wondering what the fuck he just said, rather than what the fuck he meant.
I'd start swimming if you want to make it to the ship before sundown.
Sundown? Sundown? It's right there. You could cover that distance in 5 minutes. Look, there's basically a path there already. You could wade to it. And why would sundown matter? Ships can fly at night, you Burke. But oh no, the script needs her to think she's trapped here, I guess, or at least it thinks it needs her to think that she's trapped here. It doesn't really, it can just have her not particularly want to leave because she's not a character, so it can have her want or not want anything it likes. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, disguised Fanny goes down to maintenance and bumps into a charging Pip. Then a little tunnel door opens that serves no logical function unless you assume the Jedi take beavers around on all of their missions, and out pops Basil the Convenience Beaver, and this ensues. Just to remind you what is meant to be happening here, we are 2.5 episodes out from the end of the show, with pretty much every question raised until this point still open. This episode is meant to be the fallout from the deaths of a dozen Jedi. Squid Game is meant to be mourning his murdered Padawan and grappling with the enormity of his guilt. He led this mission, and his whole team is dead. Fanny May, meanwhile, has been working her whole life for a chance to take revenge on the Jedi, including him, and now she is in the ideal place to do it. She is indeed one Jedi short of completing her vengeance quest, and Occupational Safety and Health Administration is currently trapped on an island with the guy who just murdered all of her friends. There is a huge amount left to do in this story, and we should be at one of its darkest and most serious moments. But instead, we're pissing about watching beavers do kung fu, and droids pissing on people's faces because lol. Maybe. Leslie, if this is the most important thing you've ever made, why do you have absolutely nothing to say? So disguised Fanny reboots Pip to factory settings, which I think means she's technically wiped his consciousness and he is dead. But this isn't even played as a sad or momentous beat, because even though the last episode wanted us to think Occupational Safety and Health Administration was sacrificing her friend, this episode has realized that nobody really gives a fuck about Pip after all, and so it's about as emotional as wiping an iPhone that you found in a ditch. His eyes go from white to red. I guess this means he's evil now, maybe, I don't know.
Can you run a check on the power system?
So yeah, just recapitulating that Fanny Mae isn't behind the ship's problems. The problems really do just occur because fuck it, why not, it's convenient. I don't know why Fanny should want to fix the ship. You'd think being stranded alone on a ship without power with the one guy in the entire galaxy you really want to kill sometimes, who doesn't know that you really want to kill him sometimes, would be pretty much the best situation a so-called clever assassin could hope to find herself in. But no, I guess not. So she really is going to fix the ship because this is just one of the 14 other Fanny Mays, probably. Why not? Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, a couple of elephant puffins prepare to fuck. Yeah, you thought those were the trunks, didn't you? They're not. They're actually dicks. Not so cute now, are they? While inside the cave house, we continue some pointless filler dialogue.
What did you mean by strength in the Force?
Exactly that.
If you were a Jedi, you know it's something you must exercise. Without training, it fades.
And that's what they told you.
No, I'm pretty sure that is not what they taught her, because I'm pretty sure that's not what the Jedi believe. If they believe the Force fades for lack of use, how could they ever detect Force-sensitive children, Leslie? How could they detect the Force in children who've never been trained to use the Force if the Force goes away when they don't train with it, Leslie? How did Qui-Gon sense Anakin, Leslie? Anakin hadn't been trained yet. I think one of the reasons modern Star Wars has absolutely nothing to say about the Force is that it just doesn't understand what the Force is anymore, if indeed it ever did. On the one hand, you've got the idea it's in the blood, that it is tied to bloodlines, that it runs strong through families, which is a remnant from the Lucasfilms that JJ kind of carried over to the sequels. On the other hand, you've got the stupid Rian Johnson idea that the Force is basically accessible to anyone, and anyone can be a Jedi because egalitarianism or whatever the fuck. And on your freaky Beeble-Broxian third hand, you've got the Dave Filoni Ahsoka era idea that the Force is kind of both and also kind of neither, but it's also a muscle that you can gain if you train, even if, like Sabine, you've never been shown to be Force sensitive before, even though Yoda inconveniently uses muscles as an example of what the Force is not in Empire.
It's energy. Surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter.
Look, I think midichlorians are a dumb idea, which is one of the reasons Lucas gave them the Jar Jar treatment after The Phantom Menace by mentioning them as rarely as possible. But at this point, I'd just like Disney Star Wars to pick a lane and stick to it. If the Force is spiritual and tied to bloodlines, which is what it really should be, run with that. If the Force is democra-cringe and available to everyone who trains hard enough, then run with that. But given how important the Force is to Star Wars, choose one of them and be consistent. Stop having characters say dumb and contradictory things like this. And no, this is not excusable because it's coming from Mr. Good as a point of view Smilo. It's inexcusable because it's coming from Occupational Safety and Health Administration too, and both of them were once Jedi, meaning both of them know better, or should know better. But then, in their defense, I guess they haven't watched the other shows.
Below the surface of consciousness are powerful emotions. Anger, fear, loss, desire.
That's the path to the dark side.
Semantics.
No, Smilo, that is not semantics, that is mechanics. You yourself said in episode 5 that you have accepted your darkness. That was the line I criticized in the last video for pretty much ruining anything interesting about your character, because it essentially forgoes any genuine discussion of points of view. By the rules you have tacitly accepted, Smilo, it is not semantics. It is in fact the path to the dark side, as attested by you, Smilo, saying you have accepted that you are of the dark side. Semantics, by contrast, is all that yapping about lesbian threads we got in episode 3.
You murdered my friends.
Oh, she finally remembered. Hey, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Bit late for you to be bringing this up now, isn't it? Shouldn't this have been the first thing you threw at him? If you really gave a shit about them, you've engaged in friendly conversation with the fucker. You have stared at his penis. And now you remember that he killed people you like? Nah, I'm not buying it.
I killed Jedi. I killed those who threatened my existence.
You killed Yord.
A man who didn't hesitate to turn you in for a crime you didn't commit.
Okay, A, no one cares about Yord. B, how do you know this, Smilo? Have you been reading the script again? And C, Yord was just doing his job, even if he kind of forgot to do his job properly and he didn't read your mind and then he dumped you on the world's most hackable prison ship so you could be rescued later, but fuck it. Yord then exonerated you. He accepted your innocence from pretty much the minute your innocence was proven. If Smilo read the first bit of the script, he's probably read that bit as well, and you lived it. So if you actually gave a shit about Yord, this would not be an acceptable response from a man who also murdered about a dozen Jedi who had nothing to do with your arrest.
You killed Jackie! And where did you think that was going to go? You would have had the same relationship with her that you have with your master. One-sided. Why do you love people who can't go as deep as you can?
True. True. You should definitely fall in love with Smilo now. He can go deeper than Jackie because unlike her, he actually has a penis. Seriously, what is this? We're referencing a putative love interest that took place almost entirely off screen in a conversation with the guy who murdered that love interest, presumably in the course of igniting a love interest with that murderer? Women are fucking strange, man. And by presumably, I mean Leslie Headland has talked about the Reylo parallels in interviews, which means, much to my regret, we are over to Inverse again to see what the illiterate gremlin had to say to the illiterate gremlin publication. Question. The internet is quietly shipping Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Actually, I don't think that's what an Inverse writer would sound like. Question. The internet is quietly shipping Occupational Safety and Health Administration and Chimera. What can we expect from their relationship now that there's nothing? Leslie. How do I answer this? Well... Question. Are you like into that good girl, bad girl pairing? Leslie. I mean, enemies to lovers, baby. But I don't even think this is good girl against bad guy. I think it's more like, okay, I'll put it this way. I always really loved the line in A New Hope when Obi-Wan says Vader was seduced by the dark side. I always loved that word, seduced. I can also say that I was sent one fanfic, which I'm really glad has already started, and I was absolutely surprised at how prescient it was. Okay, but Leslie, when Kenobi says seduced, I don't think he meant that in a he was seduced by the size of the dick way. It was a figure of speech, I think, Leslie. He didn't actually want to bone the dark side. Oh, in that same interview, by the way, she also confirms that Smilo is indeed a Sith. He might also still be a Ren, because at this point we're just chucking everything into the blender and serving up whatever slop results, but she calls him a Sith, meaning that yes, there must be a cover-up or everybody has to die. I do hope everybody has to die.
I'm not my sister. I'm not that easily corrupted.
I have literally no idea who you are, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and she's 14 different people, so fair enough, whatever. Like all good lovers' quarrels, the woman storms off and then the fight moves outside, where we get the show's best ass shot by some distance, and then some more tedious dialogue.
Aren't you forgetting something? You stayed here to do something. Do it. Turn it on.
A Jedi doesn't attack the unarmed.
Stop saying the stupid line. He's not unarmed, he's a Sith Lord.
A Sith Lord?
He can use the Force. He snaps people's necks with his bare hands. Unarmed doesn't mean what you think it means, and it's a stupid rule anyway. Also, I'm pretty sure you didn't stay here to kill him, because if you'd stayed here to kill him, you'd have stabbed him with Fannie Mae's knife, or thrown it at him while he was swimming, or stabbed him with the lightsaber, or taken one of any number of opportunities you had to do that. You'd not have been ogling his Smilo Ren and having bland, boring chats with him about the nature of the Force and semantics.
Why do you still think of yourself as a Jedi? They didn't want you.
It's not true. I left.
Why?
Because I chose to.
Are you sure about that?
Let me go!
What you're feeling right now, this anger, this pain, this is who you are. The Jedi saw it, and that's why they threw you away.
They didn't throw me away.
Then why aren't you a Jedi? Why aren't you a Jedi, Osha?
Because I failed!
Why can't people give a straight fucking answer? How is the protagonist this empty? In nearly 6 complete episodes, Occupational Safety and Health Administration has gone from, oh, I like and trust the Jedi implicitly in episode 1 to, guess I was never really cut out to be a Jedi in episode 2, and then pretty much the square root of nothing from that point until now, save perhaps one line of dialogue in episode 2 where the show decided that Occupational Safety and Health Administration was too angry to be allowed to confront her sister for some reason, which she'd never been shown being before, and has not been shown being again. until this very moment. Hell, episode 4 picked up with her playing it cool and calm, preparing to leave Coruscant because her sister is somebody else's problem and she doesn't give a shit.
I figured you'd stay until we apprehended her. I mean, you must be curious after all this time.
May is the Jedi's problem now, and I'm not a Jedi.
Say what you will about the prequels, and I will speak ill of the prequels all day, much as I love them. But at least Lucas understood that getting Anakin from the innocent, bright-eyed kid of the Phantom Menace to the child-murdering psychopath of Revenge of the Sith required a lot of show as well as a lot of tell. Hell, there's barely a scene across Attack of the Clones when Anakin isn't angry, confused, bitter, and resentful, so much so that Revenge of the Sith tried and largely failed to lighten him up a bit. Leslie, the mystery is in the why of things. You can show Occupational Safety and Health Administration struggling with the past, with her anger, with whatever it is that caused her to fail, without telling us why all of this is the case or what it really means. In fact, that's normally how you get the audience interested in the why of things to begin with. We've had opportunities to do this with Occupational Safety and Health Administration, but I'm really tired of pointing out now that none of them have been taken. If your protagonist is characterized with blank nothingness for 90% of the time, with the remaining 10% being a single mention that she might be angry and conflicted, and then this scene where she is angry and conflicted, then your protagonist isn't really that angry and conflicted. She's boring. She's empty. And it doesn't seem especially clever or manipulative of Smilo to bring this out of her, because it was never established as being in her to begin with. My god, the show would be so much improved had they actually given Occupational Safety and Health Administration a personality. She's so vacuous that pretty much any character work would do. Just something to give us a sense of who she is that can be paid off here in this scene as Smilo tries to bend her to his will or corrupt it, but you can't corrupt a vacuum. It's dumb as hell to think that you can, Leslie. It's all a complete waste of time. Also, your lightsaber looks cheap and shit in this shot. Well done, Acolyte, you've made lightsabers bad too.
I understand. I lost everything, Osha. But when you lose everything, that's when you're finally free.
But no, Smilo, that's pretty much the opposite of the thing you just said. You just finished telling us that all the things below your consciousness, passion, fear, and desire were what makes you free. It's the Jedi who believe you should let go of everything. Look, here's Yoda saying exactly that.
Attachment leads to jealousy. The shadow of greed, that is.
What must I do, Master Yoda?
Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose.
Now who's doing semantics, you sausage? Anyway, Occupational Safety and Health Administration doesn't kill him. Boo. And we screen wipe away to Coruscant. At least I think it's Coruscant. It doesn't have a title card, so really it could be anywhere.
Have you heard from Master Soul?
No, but our team is ready and we depart in 20. Are you joining us on the mission, Master?
I am.
To the Outer Rim. You get nauseous when you travel through hyperspace?
I don't get sick. I find it unsettling.
But, Master, I'm sure that these casualties are due to the planet's uncharted environment.
I need to handle this personally.
Hey, Jedi Knight vegan British face. If it's an uncharted environment, then you cannot be sure they died because of the environment, can you? I'm genuinely not sure what else this scene is meant to achieve. We left the last one with Green Bean saying, "We must go to Kofar." And here we've established they are going to Kofar. They are still going to Kofar. Is the mention of nausea an attempt to show how very dead set Green Bean is on dealing with this matter personally? Because, I think we could have just inferred that from the purposeful way she walked out of the previous scene. Or is it just to give her a character trait because Leslie realizes she hasn't actually given her own wife a single characteristic worth naming? That'd make for awkward pillow talk, wouldn't it? Hey, Les, remember how I said I wanted you to write me how you see me? I was kind of hoping you might see, love and honor and strength and passion. Is this really all you see in me, Leslie? Am I just a green bean to you? Is it a mandler? I've seen the way you look at that fucking bitch. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Basil is still pissing about in the vents. This shit actually seems to have designated beaver vents. Yeah, okay, fine. But why is Basil still alive? That's my more pressing question. Remember how Fannie Mae is supposed to be a clever assassin who, in episode 1, was quite willing to murder innocent civilians to get at her target? She should have stabbed that beaver like it's her own bloody beaver, vigorously and with much passion. You can't show her being a cold-blooded killer one moment and then have her too nice to murder a beaver in the next. What am I talking about? Of course you can. It's Fanny. She has 14 different personalities. One of them probably works for Peter, I bet. You realize, of course, because you're watching this video and that makes you a smart person, that all of this is just to fill the runtime, right? If Basil is going to alert Squid Game, then there is really no reason he shouldn't already have tried, and nothing he's done in all this time has materially fuck no. Okay, no, I'm not saying it. I am not talking about the material changes to a fucking beaver's considerations. You have dragged me pretty low, Disney Star Wars, but nope, it's not happening. Fuck your beaver. Squid Game calls disguised Fanny over and she tells him she ran a diagnostic and restarted the system. The power will be back in 5 minutes or so. And no, she's not lying. The assassin who wants to murder this Jedi, maybe sometimes, had nothing to do with the ship's power problems that would have made that job easier, but she has sincerely fixed those power problems, even though you'd think this would make her job harder. You realize, of course, because you're watching this video and that makes you a smart person, that this is just to fill the runtime, right? If she were going to try and kill Squid Game, then there is really no reason she shouldn't already have tried, and nothing she's done in all this time is materially fuck it, what's the point?
How could I not have sensed that villain's true intentions when we first met him on Olega?
Because you didn't even try, you moron. You didn't even try. You didn't even try to read his mind, even though you've already been shown doing this in far more trivial situations. And that's a different mechanic than sensing vague intentions and whatnot. Gone are the days when, as Obi-Wan said, the Force has a strong influence on the weak-minded. Episode 2 showed you pulling information directly from Fanny May's mind, and she's Force-sensitive, when you had the same motive to try that on Temu Ezra. And even if you did conveniently forget to try it on him, you don't let people off with a caution when they are a confessed accomplice to at least one murder. I have said it before, I will say it again. That botched interrogation scene in episode 2 is the worst scene in The Acolyte for the damage it does to the plot, to the rest of the story, to the characters involved in it, to everything. It's compounded by episode 5, where Smilo as good as tells us he wears his stupid helmet to stop people reading his mind. That compounds the problem because he wasn't wearing it in episode 2. If you couldn't read his mind or intentions when he wasn't wearing the helmet, then he doesn't need the helmet to stop you reading his mind, does he? And by the way, doesn't all this also call into question the way Temu Ezra acted in that situation? He played the scene like a bumbling fool, the purpose being to misdirect the audience. But given he had every reason to believe he had been arrested, and he should have had every reason to suppose he would be mind-raped, why would he have even taken the risk of trying to talk his way out of it? We know how easily he kills Jedi, and he'd have taken them completely by surprise. Obviously he didn't do that because the script said it wasn't time for him to do that, but looking back and based on what we now know about him, his actions there seem rather less than believable.
You found him. Your pip droid.
Yes, he's okay now.
I noticed the way you take care of him, talk to him, love him, even though he's just a machine.
I've always been like that, even when I was little.
I know.
I had to lose a lot of myself in order to become a Jedi, even if I didn't know it at the time.
I'm sorry if you felt that way.
How could I feel any other way? Have you told me everything that happened on Brentalk?
You were very young.
But Squid Game, you said you were going to tell her everything. Listen, this is you telling her you were going to tell her everything.
You're not going to face her. You're going to face your past. Both of us will. Once we get May safely to the ship, I'll explain everything.
Listen, this is you pretty much saying the same thing again.
Why did he say I shouldn't trust you? What did you do?
Please, Osha. I'll explain.
Why are you still stalling?
But I'm not now. You can tell me.
Oh, that's why you're stalling. You were waiting for another interruption. God, that was close. We almost had to have a meaningful conversation. You know, like you promised we would, Squid Game, 2 episodes ago.
Hello, is anybody there? Can you hear me? My name is...
would you forgive me? Would you forgive me if I said that at this point I've basically just given up? Absolutely none of this makes any sense at all. At what point did Fannie Mae decide she wasn't trying to kill Squid Game anymore? At what point did Squid Game realize she was Fannie Mae? Who was Fannie Mae trying to chat to there and why? Why would Fannie Mae have fixed the ship and the comms? Is she back to surrendering herself to the Jedi again, like she said she was going to do in episode 4? But then why did she try and stab Squid Game in the back at the beginning of this episode? Why was Squid Game being so coy about something he promised he'd reveal when they got back to the ship anyway? What about any of the preceding alerted him to Fanny's true identity? Did he always know? But if he always knew, why would he have voluntarily left Occupational Safety and Health Administration on Kofar? Did he find out more recently? Well, nothing about anything gave that impression. It can't have been Basil telling him because he doesn't speak Beaver, and because Fannie Mae followed Basil into this scene. Basil wouldn't have had the time. Did Basil tell him earlier maybe? Well, then why did Squid Game wait until now to act? And why was Basil pissing about with Pip in maintenance? Why didn't Squid Game spot the lesbo tattoo or the singed noodles? My guessiest of guessy guesses is that Squid Game sent the distress signal thinking Fannie Mae was really Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Then, at some point, somehow, for some reason, he realized she wasn't Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and the show just forgot to include that bit. It can't be because she was asking questions of him in this scene, because the last time he spoke to actual Occupational Safety and Health Administration, she was asking pretty much the same questions in the woods. Maybe then, realizing it wasn't Occupational Safety and Health Administration in that scene the show forgot to include, he changed his mind about contacting the Jedi, because he's not really ready for what will happen when they learn that Occupational Safety and Health Administration had a twin, and that twin is alive, even though in episode 1 they already knew she had a sister, and we're about to find out that Jedi Knight Tofu Dick Avocado One knows she had a twin, so fuck knows what's going on there. But given the show vaguely wants us to do a whole "we must face the past" moment, and has been drawing an implicit contrast between grief-stricken Squid Game and calm and controlled Smilo throughout this episode, I could believe that this is what is motivating Squid Game here. He's not ready to face the past, maybe. Or he wants to face the past but on his own terms? God. Gee, it'd sure be nice if it weren't the guessiest of guessy guesses though, wouldn't it? Why not have the scene where he realizes who she really is? Would have taken you about 5 seconds. I've given you the options.
Master Soul, the rescue team is on their way. Leave your transponder on.
Hey, if he hadn't decided to act all sus and just jump away in this moment, they'd have crashed right into him. And I know it's tedious returning to this point several times in each video, but episode 2 did tell us Kofar is in the Outer Rim, and they've just jumped here from Coruscant, and this isn't how time works. Whatever the case, they descend straight to the planet's surface, which I guess means they didn't scan for or pick up any kind of drive signature, otherwise they'd have spotted that a ship just jumped away mere seconds before they turned up. You might think that landing on the planet's surface would do them no good at all. Fanny and Timu Ezra were only able to find Kilnaka's shack because Timu had been there before. Fuck knows when or how or what he did there, but never mind. And Squid Game and Co. were only able to find it because they had a tracking beaver. But don't worry. Green Bean has a green beaver all of her own, and it's very, very good at tracking.
Did they say? Seems an Umbra Moth colony hatched last night and wreaked havoc on a local settlement. If the Jedi had been anywhere near that colony, that could explain a large amount of casualties.
Listen, Brit Teeth Veggie Man, you might get your ass handed to you by moths, but we're talking about actual Jedi who don't have severe protein deficiency. I think they could handle the local fauna, presumably sensing a pathway through the Force with her vagina. I mean her beaver. No, wait, I know I do mean her vagina. Presumably sensing a pathway through the Force with her vagina beaver, Green Bean leads her team on the 3-hour trek into the Kofar forest, while over on Unknown Planet, Smilo is soldering his Cortosis helmet back together. You know, the helmet he shouldn't have, because Squid Game should have taken it with him when he left. I'm pretty sure it used to be the case that Cortosis was able to resist blaster bolts and lightsabers simply because of its incredibly high rate of energy absorption. This, as well as its brittle nature... Yeah, that's right, I said brittle, fight me. Anyway, high energy absorption plus its brittle nature made it very difficult to mine and to fashion into any kind of useful implement. But if that was still the case, then I'm not sure what good prodding it with a soldering iron is going to do.
Could you give the same pitch to my sister?
I made a mistake with May. I thought she wanted more than just revenge. I thought she wanted what I want.
What do you want?
The power of 2.
So you're telling me you can functionally read Occupational Safety and Health Administration's mind to the point where you can basically draw information straight from the script about her backstory. And you do this mainly by reading her emotions, but also maybe reading minds because that's a thing people can do in this show. But you mistakenly forgot to find out something so basic as Fannie Mae's motivations in the 16 years you were training her? I'm not sure I'm buying that, Smilo. If counterpoint, you'd have thrown up your hands in frustration and said, well, what do you want from me, Occupational Safety and Health Administration? Your sister changes her mind every 5 fucking minutes. What am I supposed to do with that? Well, then I'd have had some sympathy. We can probably read this as another tie into the mysterious Lefebvre Brendock, given the power of 2 directly calls back to the horrible lesbian chant from episode 3. But if you're expecting Occupational Safety and Health Administration to have noticed that, to say something like, the power of 2? Now that's a phrase I've not heard for a long time. Or maybe, hey, I remember that. My mother's used to talk about the power of 2. How do you know about it, Smilo? Well, quit it. Stop asking questions. We have to save something for the next episode because, you know, this episode's so jam-packed with stuff. We can't have Occupational Safety and Health Administration making helpful or reasonable inquiries of her captor just yet. Her role is to be boring. And by boring, I mean really, really, really fucking boring. Like, completely parking absolutely every single half-formed character beat featured in this episode so far boring. You killed my friends? Never mind. You provoked me into almost killing you by baiting me about some mysterious failure in my past? Who cares? You corrupted my sister? Never mind. You showed me your dick? Oh, well, I guess I'll stick around and watch you work. Bringing sexy back over there. By which I mean sexy back over there. Chicks dig scars. They read them like one of those survivorship bias demonstrations. Oh, you've got a scar there and there and there? Well, then I guess I'll have to stab you somewhere else when the time comes.
Where'd you get that scar?
How do you think I got it?
Looks like someone stabbed you in the back.
Someone who threw me away.
Your Jedi Master?
Oh boy, I can't wait to find out who his master was. And no, I can't feign enthusiasm anymore. This is also very, 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 very dull. Yes, some people have theorized that the light whip did it, but I don't think there's any mention in the comics of Master Greenbean losing an apprentice. But then, if Disney doesn't care about the canon people actually like, I can't see them being overly precious about comics damn near nobody read. Dramatic inertness is the show's most reliable rule, and Greenbean being behind it would be dramatically inert, because we are 2 episodes out from the end and she is still not a character. But I still harbor this very quaint hope that his backstory might tie into something meaningful in some way. It could be Squid Game, for example. Hence lines like this from episode 5.
Master Soul, you don't remember me.
But once again, episode 2 comes damn near to ruining everything because he saw his face and he didn't recognize him. Unless, of course, he didn't Uncle Luke and tried to murder Smilo as a child because he had a bad dream. Smilo did say he was a Jedi a very long time ago, but then we'd still have to figure out how Smilo is tied to Brendog, wouldn't we? Which, of course, leads us to the theory I think I mentioned in the last video. Smilo was a failed experiment of the witches. But I am conscious repeating all these strands of ideas that I am probably just doing work the writers couldn't be bothered to do themselves in trying to come up with an interesting resolution that actually ties together all the various aspects of setup for a satisfying payoff. And that's just not Leslie's style, is it? So fuck it, it's probably Yaddle. Yaddle's behind it all. You heard it here first.
Kurtosis, but also a sensory deprivation headpiece, like we used as younglings.
It blocks out all your senses?
So it's just you and the Force, and what you bring with you.
Okay, that's an Empire callback, but that means absolutely nothing because Smilo is just now lying. Occupational Safety and Health Administration puts the helmet on later, because of course she does. It has eye slits in it. Smilo could evidently hear through it in the last episode. That's how he was able to have conversations. Smilo was also able to get into other people's minds while they were prevented from getting into his, like some kind of shit Magneto. So what, this sensory deprivation helmet that doesn't actually deprive you of your senses because you can still see and hear only lets in the Force except when it blocks the Force from getting in? Oh, truly this is the gayest Star Wars ever.
Try it on.
I don't trust you.
So fucking leave, you mup! You're eating his food, for fuck's sake!
Nor should you. But you should learn to trust yourself.
Oh, just shut up, shut up. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away. Hooray, Jackie's still dead. Either that or she's doing her best Amanda Stenberg impression. Master Greenbean's beaver has led them all the way here, and she'll continue to use her beaver rather than doing anything approaching investigative work. I'm pretty sure a cursory once over would reveal that all these people have been murdered by a lightsaber, but she'd rather feel the force flowing through her beaver and do that auditory flashback trick that Ahsoka pulls in her show.
No sign of Osha or her twin.
I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to know that, Jedi Knight Skim Milk Gaylord. Listen, here's Jackie and Yord not knowing it from episode 1.
I didn't know Osha was a twin.
It's not in her file.
What happened here?
What do you see?
An explosion, then a battle. One versus many. His power extraordinary, his skills erratic. His sole aim was to leave no survivors.
Oh my god, a giant bug. Oh my god, a light whip. Oh wow, so cool. I'm impressed. Fantastic. Hooray. Anyway.
They were all killed by a lightsaber. What does that tell you?
A powerful Jedi has fallen. You don't think Master Soul was responsible?
No, you vegan Where the hell did you pull that theory from? This is why you should eat meat, children. Being a vegan turns your brain into a vagina and it gets flooded with lady hormones that makes you say completely irrational things. It's why women shouldn't have the vote. Hell, episode 4 had the Jedi talking about splinter orders, or something worse. Wouldn't that be a more plausible theory? It was a more plausible theory 2 episodes ago when it was explicitly stated to be a more plausible theory. I guess Jedi Knight plant-based toupee wasn't privy to the audio flashback where Squid Game was clearly heard trying to save Occupational Safety and Health Administration, who they all know is innocent. But even so, if you're trying to portray the Jedi as cloistered and naive, then a Jedi Master like Squid Game should be the last person brought into suspicion. Unless, of course, the meta requires that we start building these Squid Game is sus actually vibes, which it absolutely does. So sure, why not have people throwing out completely unfounded and implausible allegations at random?
That is quite the accusation.
Yes, Green Bean, it is quite the accusation.
Who else would possess the power to slay such a strong group?
Something to tip the scales.
But if he did this, why would he send us a distress signal?
Prepare these bodies for burial.
They ADR'd that. They almost forgot the poor dead uns again. Nah, sod it, just leave them to the animals, it's quicker. We don't have time to be pissing about preparing bodies for burial when we have to be worrying about something to tip the scales, whatever the fuck that means. Speaking of which, Green Bean keeps saying this. And yes, I get that it's supposed to be mysterious, but ideally, a good mystery is grounded in something that is actually present in the story. If Master Green Bean comes out with a line like, "Ah yes, I always feared the Sith were out there and trying to tip the scales," at some point in the last 2 episodes, that's not a payoff as much as it's a completely new and unpredictable piece of information, because we know absolutely nothing about Green Bean, her backstory, her thoughts, her experiences, her beliefs, her mindset, nothing. Because so few people read the High Republic comics that she is functionally a brand new character, and we're now heading into the penultimate episode and we still know absolutely nothing about her. It's also another example of a character being asked a direct question and responding in the most vague and non-committal way solely in order that we postpone the reveal and drag out the runtime. Jedi Knight Toothy Mook Gay Face doesn't glean anything from this, and you'd forgive him for trying to clarify it. Hey, Master Green Bean, when you muttered that thing about the scales, I'm not sure I quite follow. Could you maybe explain to me how all the Jedi died, since you seem to know? It feels kinda important, doesn't it? But no, never mind. Let's just jump thousands of miles away to where Squid Game has chained Fanny Mae to a bed for some kinky time. Pretty sure you could slip your wrists through those cuffs, my dear, but in case you can't, the safe word is the power of many.
I have no intention of harming you, May.
And let me go.
I will. Believe me. We have a lot to do. We need to find your master. We need to save Osha. But first, you and I are going to talk. I've had 16 years to think about what I would say to you if I ever got the opportunity. So you're going to listen.
Now it is, once again, impossible to know whether this is just incredibly clumsy writing or whether it's supposed to tell us something important, because hitherto we've all assumed that Squid Game assumed that Fannie Mae was dead, so he would never have expected to get that opportunity, would he? If the show means to imply that he always suspected she was alive, then obviously that is important information because it feeds into the general cover-up we know exists about the events on Brendok, the information missing from the Jedi archives, what he knows that he has not divulged to Greenbean, etc. Then, of course, we'd have to ask questions like, but why didn't you stay on Brendok to make sure she was dead? I mean, alive. Why didn't you at least check the bottom of that hole she fell into? Have you never seen Star Wars before? Have you done nothing to try and locate her since? Why? Alternatively, the show has just given that impression by accident. If so, then most of these questions actually still exist anyway, but we shouldn't read this particular scene as anything other than yet another instance where a character teases a conversation rather than just having a conversation. Because if you tease it, you can interrupt it before it happens and waste even more time. And another $22 million. Our interruption in this instance is the end credits. Yes, somehow that's the end of the episode. The only remotely pleasurable thing I got out of it is that it proved one of my larger predictions correct. I said in my episode 4 video that Occupational Safety and Health Administration would end up being captured by Smilo and Fannie Mae would end up being captured by the Jedi, and we then come at the big truth of episode 3 with both twins hearing the opposite perspective. Because truth is a point of view, Anakin. But I did not predict that episode 5 would leave us set up for that eventuality, only for episode 6 to do absolutely nothing with it and accomplish absolutely nothing of note. Honestly, if I'm going to try and predict episode 7, it's that Squid Game is taking Fannie Mae back to Brendok to show her his truth, and maybe Smilo and Occupational Safety and Health Administration will go back there so Occupational Safety and Health Administration can learn Smilo's truth, and this episode will be all but completely redundant. Because really, what have we achieved? Occupational Safety and Health Administration is trapped with Smilo, as she was at the end of episode 5, and the extent of their story was, I've got something very important to tell you, but I'll tell you later. Fannie Mae is trapped with Squid Game, and the extent of their story was, I've got something very important to tell you, but I'll tell you it later. And Jedi Knight Legume Nutri Yeast is tagging along with Greenbean, and the extent of their story was, I've got something very important to tell you, but I'll tell you it later. I would unironically prefer a dreaded anime recap episode to this complete waste of time, space, and money. We have achieved nothing. This has been pointless. Fuck it. See you in the next one. Goodbye.